Mhlaba was attending today's proceedings and joins us live now in studio. Ziniko, good to have you. Thank you very much for your time. It seems she, firstly says she didn't quite see the letter or even the writing of this disbandment quite up until late when Khumalo raised it with her. But she is of the view of Mkhwanazi that this was a bad decision.
Yeah, definitely, Prati. Her decision, her testimony was centered around proving that point, that position of suggesting that it was not necessary, firstly, for the dockets to be brought to Pretoria, but even the decision to disband the political killings task team in the first place, was ill thought, or the minister was poorly advised legally in terms of how would that go about. Because at the beginning of the testimony, she made mention of the fact that even the wording of that letter or that instruction by Minister Senzo Mchunu was problematic because it talked about the immediacy of that particular decision having to be implemented. She said that in police terms, there's no task team that can be disbanded immediately, because that would mean all the officers on the ground will have to down tools there and there.
What did it mean for the operations of the police or the task team?
Yeah, so that was the main point, saying that that is why her office, because she's the division head of detectives and forensics, but also the person was the project manager of that political task team, Dumisani Khumalo. They had problems in terms of the time frame they were given to make sure that that decision was operationalized on the ground. And those tensions or those delays, because they said that they had to do a lot of things, they had to consolidate and also just investigate how far all these cases were in terms of their investigations. We're talking about cases that were still, in preliminary stages of their investigations. We're talking about dockets that were ready for prosecution. We're talking about dockets that were already in court. So saying that, they had about 7 days now to consolidate and get the update, but also at the very same time, communicate that decision that, guys, this team has to be done away with. So she's saying that, the minister was badly advised and that he should have not taken that decision without consulting the national leaders of the SAPS who are responsible for day-to-day running of different units and different task teams. So let's take a listen to her as she was explaining how important is it in this particular case, for a National Commissioner Masemula to protect his teams on the ground, because we've got the CEO of the policing in South Africa, who in this case is General Masemula. Yeah. But General Masemula has other heads under him who are supposed to be implementing decisions of the executive. So she's saying that, well, in this particular case, General Masemula should have protected them and engaged better with the minister in terms of the implications of such decisions. Let's take a listen to the witness, General Mhlaba.
We have the nicest national commissioner who's also very operationally strong, if I may add. But I think he has an obligation to protect us as executive under his command from political exposure. It is difficult to work with people who, I think we would call them in organized crime, politically exposed people, the PEPs, And I think the proximity between the executive, not only for SAPS, I think in government, should really be drawn, maybe one of the recommendations from the Commission, because this is where problems start. Once we have that close proximity to the minister, then lines get blurred, and I think the executive authority, who's the accounting officer, also does not know how to manage the department. And I submit that I think the minister ought to have taken time and effort to orientate himself with how SAPS works, and probably consult not just individually, but as a collective.
It's the 121 dockets, I think, that is in question here. But it's not just the 121 dockets, right? They are victims of the crimes that were committed when those cases were open. And this back and forth that has been going on, dockets being moved here, dockets being moved there, cases not going on, the infighting between the police, they are affected by this.
Yeah, actually, Prati, Commissioner Khumalo, when he was listening to these revelations by these witnesses, here is the point that we understand the operational, fights that you guys had at the national office about this particular decision of disbanding this this unit, whether it should happen or it should not happen, or the manner in which it should happen. But at the center of this problem, investigations were halted. Victims were affected. The victims were not getting justice and updates they were, they were supposed to be getting. Therefore, as leadership of SAPS, you failed this. Therefore, he was suggesting that maybe you should take responsibility and maybe apologize to the nation for the chaos that the country is now hearing of for the first time.
Sure.
So let's take a listen to the commissioner highlighting that point.
My view, General, is that all of you, from General Masemola, General Sibia, yourself, Khumalo,
yes,
you let the victims of crime down, because these are now internal squabbles at senior national police level, and it is impacting victims of crime because the dockets are sitting in Pretoria for several months. There's no plan B in place. There was a plan A, it didn't work. Mkwanazi says, I'm not taking responsibility for these dockets because I don't know why they were taken in the first place. As national leadership, there should have been a plan B to say, now that we are where we are, what do we do with these dockets? And I haven't seen anything. And I think all of you should take responsibility for that and should apologize, actually, to the nation and the victims of crime that you let them down in this instance.
And Commissioner, I totally agree with you. And I did say when I think there was a question around the impact of the minister's decision, and for me talk to exactly that the decisions we make have got far-reaching implications. So the process being hasty didn't help the process. Didn't help us that we didn't have time to plan and say what happens, because we just had to make actions as we moved along. So I do agree with you, and I think we do owe this nation an apology.
But from all that she presented today, do you get a sense that there was pressure from her superior, Mr. Sibia, or from the minister politically for her now to conjure up a plan to disband this team? I mean,
there was definitely pressure. The Prati question mentioned that on the initial phases of that, of following that instruction, the minister was at times, interacting with the officials directly, not through General Masemola. And then when the minister did not get joy and felt that, Khumalo and the witness were delaying the processes, he had stopped talking to them and find other platforms or forums to express his unhappiness. And then also those decisions or those comments coming from General Sibia, towards this witness and Mr. Khumalo, suggesting that, they were not, they were not delivering on the instructions. They would define the instructions of the minister, and that's why the witness confirmed that they felt pressured, but at the same time they had to balance, what would happen practically in terms of policing, but also the wording and the pressure that was coming from the executive and some of the leadership. In this case, the Deputy National Commissioner responsible for detectives, Mr. Sibia. So there was that pressure. However, I think there was a sense that, well, we do understand that these cases or this unit has to be disbanded, but there must be some investigations or some dockets that remain with the political killings task team so that they are not abruptly ended, because that will have consequences in terms of the actual prosecution of those cases. So that's where things are at right now. But we'll have to see, Prati, whether then there will be witnesses will have to be brought in before the commission to respond to these allegations, because these are very serious, allegations made by this particular witness. But we'll have to see whether in part 2 or phase 2 of the commission we'll see any leaders of the SAPS being subpoenaed back to the commission to respond and account for these comments that were made today.
Which leads me to my final question. What next now for the commission? I believe you were held into a meeting just after matters were wrapped up. Were you being briefed on what are the next processes?
Not necessarily. The next process has been made public. It's the fact that now phase 1 has been done away with in terms of the witnesses who were called and some of them who had volunteered to appear before the commission. But now phase 2 is about witnesses who have been subpoenaed by the commission. So these are the people who will not be coming voluntarily. These are the people who would be called by the commission to say, Mr. So-and-so made these allegations, mentioned you, so you need to come in and respond. So those people will not be coming because they want to, and they will be coming because they have to come. And that's why this week we saw a day where there was no witness because none was available. Some witnesses had requested time. Others had said that they will prefer to come later. So that's where phase 2 will be focusing on. Now people have to respond based on the fact that they were implicated or mentioned by witnesses who had appeared during the phase 1 of this commission.
Ziniko, I appreciate your time. Thanks for your intervention this afternoon.